And
Greetings to one and all. It gives me immense warmth and great pleasure to grace all of your presence in the interest of our entire team. It gives me tremendous contentment to be presenting the welcome speech amongst our most esteemed personalities. I am Mayank Sharma, co-founder of Persig Research, an academic research consulting organization. Before we begin with this webinar, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to all of you who sincerely committed to this event to make it a success. This event would have been impossible without the support of each and everyone present here. The topic of the discussion of today's webinar is research writing hacks. Through this webinar, an individual is given a platform to interact with our experts and learn the art of selecting a research title, selecting a research methodology, identifying tricks to publish in reputed journals, followed by question and answer sessions. On this webinar, I would like to welcome Dr. Shaunak Pal as our expert. Shaunak is a faculty in management, is specialized in teaching business analytics and machine learning techniques. He has completed fellow program in management and information technology and systems area from IIM Lucknow. He received his Bachelor of Technology in Computer Science Engineering from West Bengal University of Technology. He worked as a system engineer in Tata Consultancy Services in the banking and financial sector for over 2 years. His research is focused on frameworks that use machine learning and statistical technique to provide solutions related to IT governance and risk management in the healthcare domain. The target of his work is to help in decision making related to resource optimization, IT investment and security policy in hospitals. Shaunak was a recipient of a scholarship for the summer program on data mining and business intelligence in cybersecurity in Ben Gurion University, Israel in 2017. He has published several papers in international conferences and journals. He has also written an award-winning case study with other authors that has won Emerald 23 Seaman Case Writing Competition in 2017. Well, this webinar is hosted by Persig Research. Persig Research is an academic research consulting organization assisting scholars and academicians in thesis writing, research paper writing, and book writing. We are a group of professors, data analysts, writers, technology experts collaborating to ignite new research ideas and curate world-class research topics. I would like to add some important note to all the participants who have joined us today. Your active participation is important throughout the session. Right now, I request everyone to be on mute to avoid any background noises that may distract you from listening to the webinar. I will encourage all the participants to pose their questions right from the onset of the session, and we will try to answer all the questions in the end. I ensure the webinar will be profitable and fruitful for everyone present over here. Thank you, one and all. I am now inviting Mr. Jitendra Verma, co-founder of Persig Research.
thank you very much, Mayank, and thank you very much for the beautiful introduction. And on behalf of we, the team of the Persig Research, I welcome Dr. Shaunak Pal sir. And as we have got to know, it was really tough for Dr. Pal to fetch time and come on board with us and take this discussion that we're going to do it now. So without wasting much time, sir, I would request Dr. Pal to begin with your discussion. At the end of the discussion, or for anything in between, I will interrupt you with the questions and the views wherever required. Thank you very much, sir. Please begin.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Jitendra. Thank you, Mr. Mayank, and thank you all of you who are attending this session, and all the members of Persig Research who have invited me and carrying out this particular session so flawlessly. And so I'll be starting with today's session, and I'll just share. I have got some PPT related to that, and I'll just share that and discuss a little bit about how to write a proper research paper and in a way so that it is helpful for everyone to understand and also is well understood by the reviewers, and it is acceptable in that form that you are sending. So I'll just start.
Yes, sir. Please do go ahead.
Yes. So good afternoon, everyone. Today's topic is research writing. So if we really think about research writing, what is the general purpose of writing a research paper? It is to share your knowledge and research findings with other researchers, and at the same time, you share it with other practitioners who will be able to use your research in a way so that they can do something good in their day-to-day life. In especially being a management researcher, it is very important for us to direct our research in a way so that we can help the managers in performing their management duties in a much better and efficient way. So for impactful journals, what you really need to do is to understand two different ways of approaching research. One is prescription, where you are actually finding out, trying to make your work very much fit and correct for the present research scenario, whatever it is. Like now it is COVID-19. It can be also related to the emergence of these e-commerce businesses, and so many online shops are opening at the same time. So many brick and mortar stores are also closing down. There are new businesses that are coming up in the form of masks and sanitizers. So all these factors are actually the present scenario on which lot of research is being conducted, and lot of special papers are coming out in different journals that are trying to discuss about these scenarios. On the other hand, there is also certain causality research, like it might not be relevant to the present scenario, but it can be relevant to something that had happened in the past, or and it can actually help you in understanding the phenomena that has happened in the past based on those data or implications that you can conclude from your research paper. And once you do that, you can actually help people in identifying such kind of situations in the future also. So these are the main two ways how you can approach in writing your research paper. Now coming to how to write a quality research paper. First of all, coherence is a very important part, because you see, research paper is almost like writing a story, only that here there is less of imagination power, more of findings and observations that you are gaining. So in a story, you write something that is either very much happening around, or it can be also imaginative. But in case of a research paper, it is mostly about what is happening, and with a lot of data and evidences that is required. That's why it is more not a story writing, rather it is a much more of a scholarly writing. And in that way we can say that every PhD personnel who are starting to write a particular research paper, they actually go through a lot of these things, these trainings, like scholarly writing, research methodology. I think most of you have gone through this kind of trainings, and that actually help you in setting up your mind in a way, in a coherent way, so that you can think in a coherent way and approach a particular research paper. So that is very essential in one way. Second is organization. This IMRD structure is very essential. You should not miss any of it. Otherwise, it is very much, it might look like a certain kind of a mismanaged and incomplete research paper. And definitely, as you know, that incomplete research paper won't be published in a good reputed journal at least. So then in coming to introduction, we'll discuss all these different sections later in the next few slides. Then coming to the relevance part. One thing that is important is a research should be very focused. Like if you want to write a short research paper, you should not flood the whole research paper with the different findings, different areas that you have actually dwelt in before focusing yourself. Only limited amount of, so your how much findings you are going to put in a particular research paper should be dictated by the amount of words that is limited by the. So suppose you are targeting a particular journal, in that case it should be limited with that particular research. If they have limited your word limit, then you should understand that definitely you cannot go and give all your findings. You have to focus your research in a way so that it is understandable to the readers, the reviewers, and the journal also is applicable for the particular journal. So that is what relevance is all about. Now clarity is again another important part. So we have often faced this situation where we write a lot of things, and then while writing these things we understand what we are writing, but the person who is sitting just opposite to me, and if I give that person to read my writing, and he or she, they won't be able to actually understand what I have written. They cannot, it might happen that they are unable to relate whatever I have written. Now you might say that okay, they are not the experts, so only an expert can understand my writing. Well, if your writing is only for an expert, then definitely that is not a very good paper that is written, because all the different findings that we do, we are surrounded by a lot of things that are unknown. We are, as researchers, we are basically trying to explore the environment or around us. The overall, even as a management researcher, we are actually dealing with things that are already present. Everybody should understand by reading your paper. If they don't understand, then you have to break it down to them and help them understand what you are exactly pointing at. So that is a very important part. At least that thing is to be kept in mind while writing the research paper. So the next part is about introduction. So in case of introduction, it is first of all, I'm not talking about the abstract and keywords as such, because that I'll talk at the end of all discussing all these things, and they are not in my slide also, but I'll be still discussing that. But you see, introduction, methodology, then results and discussion, since these are the main aspects we have to figure out before we even think of submitting our paper in a journal. So first most important part about introduction is to help the reader understand how interesting your finding is and what from where it actually stems from. Okay, so you have to, it's better that you start with what motivated you, because definitely if you are motivated by something, there is a good chance that other people also will be motivated, and if they are motivated, then only they are going to read your paper further. So in order to do that, you have to actually talk about something that motivates you, and that will consist of, say, the first 1 or 2 paragraphs, and it might consist of a single incident that you are explaining to a huge extent, or multiple incidents can also be there. Then incidents to explain the issue is like, you have to also talk about, so suppose there are certain incident, a particular thing. Let me give you an example. Say software, you are talking about software assessment and software risk assessment and mitigation theories. Okay, so if you are talking about software risk assessment, it is already it means that you are talking about a certain issue, right, of software, and then you are saying that so you have to first start about how software risk assessment is essential to the management. Once you do that, then you actually are helping others to understand what, how, and why they should actually read your paper, because software risk assessment is an important part of management and especially IT management. And then once you have established your motivation in the first 1 or 2 paragraphs, the next part should talk about what are the issues that people face while doing software risk assessment. So these kind of issues are actually the problems that need to be researched on and that need to be solved by researchers or even managers. So whenever you face a certain problem in your day-to-day life, you start researching or you start to find out ways of how to mitigate that kind of a problem. So as we can say, we cannot stop problems from occurring all the time. The only thing that we can do is to mitigate those problems. So, and while doing that, we actually, a lot of research is done. Some of them are in the form of research papers also. So that is what I am explaining through the next point. So as we can say that the first 2 points help us place our research in in front of the reader properly. And then it is also important that while talking about these kind of researches, we also mention certain statistics and news references to add more credibility to whatever we are talking of in those 2-3 paragraphs. So the first 2 points should cover like the 2-3 paragraphs of our introduction. Then if our topic is something very different, then we can also spend a few more paragraphs regarding explaining how what are those topics or jargons. If we have used certain jargon in the title, then it is better that we discuss more about those jargons or so that people, the reader, is able to understand what we are going to do next. And in the process, the next after these 2-3 paragraphs, then we move on to the next paragraph, and where we discuss about the what happened in the past, what are the previous research findings, and to in a way to give the reader a certain comparative view of how my work differs from other researchers. Once that is done, the user is almost glued to your research paper right now. Why? Because he knows what should motivate him or what has motivated you. He knows the issue that you are going to talk about, and then finally he or she also knows that whenever researchers are whenever you are writing this paper, whatever you are writing in this paper is not what is covered in the previous research. So that is also an important part. Finally, you will provide a brief about what are the contributions of your work in the researcher or practitioners community. In this case, if you are writing a management paper, then it is for the managers. If you are writing it for a physics paper, it can be related to mechanics or anything, then it can be for them also. So basically, the practitioners should be able to relate with your paper. Then only they have a proper industry level relevance. Next, if we are going to talk about, the next part, that is literature. Although it is not within the IMRD formation, but literature and model formation are essential parts of your research paper, and it's good if you mention that. Yes, anybody saying something? Okay. Okay, so I am moving on. Literature, mainly in the literature part, what we try to do is we try to understand what are the different theory and research frameworks that have been already present that relates to the particular topic that is being discussed in the research paper. It also helps in understanding the existing works that we have gone through. That actually helps us as researchers. It helps us to create our own credibility that okay, we are not going on blindsided to a particular, while doing a particular research. We are actually going with full knowledge about whatever had been done previously, and we also properly tabularize. So not everybody has the patience to go through whatever you have written. So it is better that you tabularize them and summarize them in a very well settled format, in a good format. It is very important that your tabularization should be concise and adequate, while not leaving away information or giving too much of information. Either ways it is harmful. So it is important that you give adequate information in a very concise format. One of the most important aim of your literature review is to understand what is still not known or what is unknown, and based on that, what is the gap that is present, you are going to identify that. And then so this will consist of like the last two paragraphs of your overall literature review, and it will actually consist of what, based on your whatever literature reviews you have shown previously, it should actually be, you'll be summarizing that, okay, we have done so much of literature review and these are the few things that are unknown, and this is the gap that we have seen is still left in this particular field. And then you will have to also emphasize on the fact that what, how and why you should fill up you want to fill up the gap. So it is important that you mention why that particular gap that you want to fill is an important factor, and that will again emphasize on the importance of the paper. So every section, in a way, is at the end of every section you are emphasizing that your work is important. Okay, and next part we are talking about the model selection. The model section totally depends on you, that I won't be discussing. So the model section part is about first of all, approaching the particular problem and understanding that what are the variables that are necessary for that particular problem statement. So you first explain properly and in a precise way. You have to explain your research objectives, then your research questions and your hypothesis. And while doing that, in your hypothesis, of course, you are mentioning the dependent and independent variables. And in certain cases, what happens is that your dependent variables are quite huge and needs to be listed properly for the reader, so that they get a gist that what are the dependent and independent variables that you are going to talk about, and how they are going to actually what exactly those abbreviations. If you are using abbreviations in your variables, then you have to properly explain those variables and whatever assumptions you have taken in that same model section. And it is also important that you explain the mathematical representations, and you also form a particular model diagram that is easy to understand. So everybody might not be always they might not have always the patience to, if they are just skimming through your paper, and if you really want your paper to be useful to someone and get a good citation, so these things are also there. But what is important is that writing a good paper always needs that you should have a easy to understand paper, that if someone doesn't want to go through your whole paper, at least they can get a gist about your paper just by skimming through it. Okay. And then moving on to data and methodology. Coming to the data and methodology part, we have to properly mention our data source, and don't be shy about that. If you are using a data source that is secondary, then everybody has it, and if you are not using a data source that everybody has it, then also there is no chance that they will be able to actually get your data. Okay, it is without your permission at least. Okay, because once you have published something, then definitely you always have that proprietorship on that particular set of data in a way. So moving forward, then based on that, once you have mentioned the source of data and on that basis you have chosen the data, now data can be of two types, that is primary and secondary. And primary data can be in the form of observed data when you are on the field and you are observing data, and then there can be survey data also. But in both these cases you have to properly mention how much robust your data is. So the robustness is actually mentioned by explaining the data in more details, that how you have taken it. So it can come under data, it can come under methodology. So generally, in order to avoid any confusion, I talk of data and methodology at the same time. So ensuring the robustness of the data is also important. You should properly mention that your data is not biased. Your data consists of covers the population completely, or if it does not cover the population completely, then why? That kind of a understanding about your data you should have. So that is also one important thing. Lastly, about data, while you are forming your data, you have to figure out clearly that what is your unit of analysis. So every problem, it is either affecting through an individual, or it is affecting the organization. Generally, in order to research a particular solution to a problem, you have to pick up someone or some evidence, and you have to understand that what is your unit of analysis on which you are actually trying to do the research on. It can be an individual, it can be a group of individuals, it can also be an organization. So this is also an essential part. I won't get into too much of research methodology, because unit of analysis is a very important topic of research methodology. The next part is about how to write a research methodology. Just giving a basic idea is that you should write them properly in a stepwise manner, explain the different data transformations you have done and how you have done the model formation. If you are using multiple models, then you should mention that which model applies to which particular hypothesis, or when you are changing the different models, why you are changing the different models, whether you have compared two different models or not. This kind of details will be present or should be present in your methodology to give a clear idea to the reader. And then about the result and discussion. Objectiveness of your result and presentation is very important. Your result should not be very confusing. You should mention, so if you are doing a regression, you should properly mention which are the most important or significant variables. If you are doing a classification or clustering kind of work, then you have to properly mention what is the what is the rule set that you have obtained, or what is the and you have to explain that through a very critical way. I mean, by picking up each point of your rule set, or by picking up each variable results that you have obtained through the regression technique, you have to then explain each of those variables, why they have actually shown this kind of a result, and how it reflects back to your earlier hypothesis or any kind of existing research that is present. And you have to properly say that whether it is actually giving you a basic idea of whatever is happening and why it is happening. That kind of a analysis of your result is important for actually creating the credibility of your research paper. Finally, it should be always good if you properly tabularize your results. So as I have written here, adding flavors, use citations to show whether your result supports or denies earlier research and why, and how your research findings can fill up the gap. These kind of explanations will actually help you in adding more support in favor of your paper. And finally, you have to properly summarize whether your hypothesis, your results, so as I have written is here, adding accepted or rejected. That decision is to be made, and how you have made that decision, that also have to be properly explained. Anything without an explanation is a dangling point that can be picked up and put on the debate machine. Okay, and the moment it is happening, then the credibility of your paper decreases. Then explain in detail the contributions and limitations of your research paper. Obviously, it is important that you mention these things, because definitely your paper is not covering everything. Your paper is not without any assumption. It definitely might have some assumptions, because why I am saying using the word definitely is because any research is not you always have certain limitations of understanding. You cannot always get the exhaustive set of variables or do a very exhaustive research. If it is, I mean, at least that is what my idea is. If someone does that kind of a research, that has to be a very big thesis, or not at least a paper. Okay, so finally, in the conclusion, do not simply dismiss a particular study or part of a study as inconclusive, because so your study should have some definitive conclusion. Just because your hypothesis might not be accepted does not mean your study is a failure. And if your study is a failure, then that is not going to be accepted by any journal. Okay, even writing your failure, is another style. If it is a failure, it's fine, but you have to write it down that through your failure you have learned something out of it. That is important. So then finally, whatever your overall paper has been able to find out, that has to be concluded properly, and you have to treat your study as a well organized finished work that is very much applicable for managers or practitioners and researchers. So that is all about overall writing of a research paper. Finally, I would like to summarize. Again, summarizing is an important part. So I am going to summarize my PPT also in a way that you can see we start from this particular, I'll just use a laser pointer. So you start from here, identifying research problem, and then we move on to discussing the research questions and research objectives. We have to first, based on that, so these things actually happen very simultaneously, because without the particular identification of the research problem or the research questions and objectives, you cannot actually start writing your introduction immediately. Generally, we actually start with literature review in order to figure out what kind of a research problem is actually good. Because if you have thought of a certain problem and then you find that there are already papers around it or discussing about it, then you have to actually properly figure out what kind of a research problem you are going to approach that makes your paper unique. So in a way, we can say that literature review, we start with literature review, but it is given shape based on this it gives shape to our identifying research problem and research objectives. And from the literature review, we also move on to developing our theoretical and research framework that gives us the hypothesis. Now this hypothesis should again, as you can see these dotted arrows, this should again refer back or satisfy whatever research questions, research objectives are there, which are again being derived from the research problem. Then coming to research design, or based on the hypothesis, the research design will be there. And finally, based on the research design, we'll have our analysis and findings. And we can see there are a lot of things that have to be considered during a research design. And those are like what kind of data sampling you are doing, what kind of methodology you are going to use, unit of analysis, data collection technique, and what kind of measurement will actually help you in saying that your research model was a good model. So in one way, for regression techniques, it is mostly your model fit. On other cases, there is significance level also is there. And then in case of classification techniques, it is accuracy, precision and recall. Then there is ROC graph, okay, and then there is clustering techniques. There you have seal-out value and a lot of other techniques that are there. So in this way, measurement is also important. So that is how I'd like to conclude this session. And now we are, I think, over to you, Mr. Jitendra.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for the good and crisp presentation. And I was going through the comment threads of the entire session, and a lot of you have written this is an excellent description and very informative sessions for them. So thank you all the professors and dear viewers who have been kept on posting the questions. I will now ask questions on your behalf. So I'll be taking your names and asking the questions the way you have sent them. Right, sir. So we have got the questions from Dr. Rahul Sharma, and he is saying that how can we have a good review of literature? So what can be a few hacks to have a good literature review, sir?
So one most important thing is your literature review should, you have to have a very good, go for Google Scholar and there specifically pick up good journals and properly mention the keywords through inverted commas, and exactly write whatever keywords you are searching for. You have to search it based on that, and you have to do an extensive literature review so that once you have done that, so as I have said, you have to critically identify the particular research problem that you are trying to address, and you have to cover and honestly cover all those aspects that you think can be necessary. Like suppose, as I have discussed about software, there is this paper I was going through software risk assessment and mitigation issues. So in that case, you have to understand what are the different software risk assessment techniques that have been discussed so far. That you have to first find out. In there you have to, it is good that you go through reputed FT category or A-star category journals first. Then if you don't get, that means that particular research area is still at a nascent stage, and then you move on to lower level categories, like not lower level, is A category, B category papers also. Nothing is lower level category as such, I would say. Then moving on, after that what you will do is that you have to properly segregate what are the different keywords that you want to poke. So first of all, software risk assessment, what are the different methods that have been so far used? Then what are the mitigation issues that have been used so far? And finally, if you have already decided on your methodology, then check what are the different methodologies they have used. So all these aspects will actually cover that everything that will consist of your overall literature.
Right. So thank you very much for this question. I will ask my question at the end of the session again to discuss about the how to find out the quality of the paper. But I have, if I'm not pronouncing wrong the name, Dr. Bemi Abbas. He is asking the question, in carrying out novel researches, is it a must we carry out experimental works in lab, or we can just carry out paper reviews of the past papers in writing hours?
Well, this is see, these both of them are very different ways of writing paper. One is considered literature review, and while doing literature review actually is not at all a bad. I mean, I have seen really good amount of cited papers, especially Dr. Samir Srivastav is there from IIM Lucknow itself. One of his reviews related to green supply chain and all. So that paper has around 16,000 citations. So huge amount of good paper actually can be done through literature review also, provided you have actually covered it in a very precise fashion, and you have properly mentioned everything, how you have done that. And most importantly, even literature reviews, extensive literature review can bring a lot of insights about what kind of research is going to happen in future and what has been done in the past. It can actually give you a proper flow from past to present about a particular topic. So good research can be done through literature reviews, just by doing literature review also. So that is my answer. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. So for experiment, Dr. Abbas is asking that in the novel writing, I mean, especially when we do literatures, that will there be any kind of lab-based experiments, or just reviewing the papers is okay?
Yes, so that is what I'm saying, that using literature reviews is a very good thing, and just by doing that, it is completely. It can also give you good papers. Experimental work is one way, and generally this is the general idea that doing an experimental work will actually experimental and very recent data, primary data work is given very much of importance. Why? There is a definite reason for that, because primary data is based on completely real life data coming from a certain field or taken through a survey. So that kind of data definitely gives out a lot of insights, and most papers are related to those kind of research, because in a way I can say that you can say success rate in terms of writing a good literature review paper is less, because people at times don't even it is difficult to actually figure out how well one have to write. I mean,
right.
Many people don't have that much prowess about writing a good literature review paper that will encompass everything, and they always tend to miss something. So it is safer in a way to say that doing experimental research and using primary data is much easier to give you a good publication. Right. But literature review can also give you good publication.
Thank you very much for this question, sir. We have Professor Saili Bagaria, and she is asking about, can you please discuss about the ideal sample size for your research thesis? So is there some ideal size of the sample for the primary?
So I generally consider sample size is very much, so there are models that deal with very less sample size. There are models that require a lot of sample size. So there are different models based on your sample size. And I would say that if you really consider about samples, there are certain basic rules, like your sample size should be at least 10 times the total number of variables that you are working on. So that is the general rule that I am talking about. Other than that, there is no specific rule about that. But this is what a general rule I have just said. This is also now refuted because there are so many techniques how you can actually deal with very small sample size also.
I think, sir, how much resource and time a researcher is having can also play a significant role in selecting the sample. Do you think so?
So yes. So see, the reason is that it is generally considered that it is gathering samples take a lot of resource and time, and for that reason only people have tried to improve on methodology. PLS-SEM is there that can help us in dealing with less sample size, and there are a lot of techniques that are already present that help us rather, so that we can have less sample size, because definitely, as you said, it considers that we generally consider that developing a sample size on your own is very difficult and time consuming.
Sure, sir. And Professor Bagaria and Professor Gopal Sharma both are having the question that, sir, is any format is there for synopsis and proposal writing and thesis? I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of formats, but which one will you suggest? Because time is short and yeah.
Yeah, format like I'm unable to whatever I have shown today in the presentation, that is the format I follow.
Right.
Okay. Now
right.
The point is that there is no definite success format for anything. How
right.
well you are writing, that only depends totally. I don't have any kind of format with that I can suggest.
Yeah, but on behalf of PERSEC, if you'll send this email, we will be surely helping you on the synopsis. There are multiple ways depending on which subject and which format you are into. So certainly we'll be sending you out some emails, because this is very short time to answer such a lengthy question. I'll move on to the next question, sir. I have a code name, Professor MMU1619. So he's asking, or she is asking, how can we search trusted, accurate, and indexed journal? Like this, I think that's a very good question, sir. How can we trust indexes and other things?
There are certain very much reputed journal lists, like ABDC journal list is there, then SCOPUS, and nowadays most of the universities are using this SCOPUS and Schemago journal list, and all the different journals. So if Financial Times also, they FT50 is one set of journal that I refer to, that they are the top level journals. Then there are different A-star and A category journals which are also quite trusted. So this is mainly related to management journals I am talking about. Then there is I think web science is also there, which can help you in going through good and trusted journals. So in that only though, so they are generally present in the form of H index and I index. Especially look into the I index. That is very helpful in actually understanding which journal has a long-term success in terms of citations. Citation is the most important part here.
Right, sir. Thank you very much. And there are quite common questions from Nitin Chandran, Rahul Sharma, and a lot of other professors. They're asking about hypothesis building, sir. I mean, I think that's a very crucial question. I think we should send light on this. That how, what is the things that we take care of when we write a hypothesis?
Okay, so when we are talking about hypothesis, so as we can say that most important thing that has to be taken care of is a good connection between whatever is observed. So there can be literature papers as well as there can be news articles. So every time I develop my hypothesis, it is based on prior observations and a general understanding of whatever happens or is happening with a good illustrative power. You have to explain properly what kind of hypothesis you want to present. The rest, whether the hypothesis is accepted or not, that totally depends. But while formulating, it is a combination of what your observation about a particular situation is, properly explaining that part, combined with your past, any kind of past observation or from any past research article or news article if it is present, then mention that part. And finally it is also about trying to understand that how your particular hypothesis is going to make an impact on that particular area, particular management or any area. Okay.
Thank you very much, sir. And Professor Selvaraj, so we have a lot of questions, sir. I'm reading, and I still have unread messages close to 54. So, and I think we have time, so we'll be taking those questions, and let us know if there is some time constraint persist. So, I'll be reading the question from Professor Selvaraj and Yappan, sir. I'm sorry if I'm not taking the correct name because of the language biases and other things, but please excuse me for that. The question I read is, please explain in detail about in what ways gap should be presented and what aspects of gap to be mentioned. I think it's a very important question, sir.
Yes, now it is a very important question, but it cannot be actually answered in a
Yes.
verbally. The point is that gap is a most important part of your research, and without a gap, you cannot actually say that your research is aiming at something. You have to find out a certain gap. Now, how to actually define a gap? It is, again, as I have said, that through different literature paper, they also mention that these are the few things that we have not still found out. We are still looking for it, and so for that reason you have to read a lot of literature and understand where the gap is. It's about critically reading a literature. If you just read a literature for the sake of it, it won't happen. That's why often I suggest many others that while reading a literature, you start noting down what are the findings, what are the factors they have used, and so that you have a set of literature from which you can actually find out that what kind of results they have got and what do you really think that can be different. So it's totally about a researcher's thought process and idea that how you can think differently from other researchers. It's all about that.
Right. And I greatly agree with you, sir, that it is not easy for just to answer this question in a Q&A where time is very limited. And I think I will request gentlemen to kindly send us an email. We can have a detailed response to your question as well. So thank you very much. Next question is from Golden Dove. So it's a very nice name. Kindly say something about what is the difference between conceptual framework and theoretical framework, sir. I mean, you can take your time to answer it.
Yeah, so it's a very good question actually. Conceptual framework, so theoretical framework is, so these are, I would just suggest that don't go by my words, because rather I would suggest that because there are papers written on it, and I can tell you that this is a very debating question, that concept. There are papers related to what is theory by Sutton and Stock. Then there is another paper that is complementing this particular paper about what theory is, theoretizing is not, by Wick. I can spell W-E-I-C-K. Okay, yeah. So these two papers actually discuss a lot about theories and theoretical framework. Now, conceptual framework, as we can say, is mostly related to mostly about whatever has been is happening. Based on that, you create a certain idea and explain it properly, and then further move on to proving it through empirical methods. Okay, that kind of a conceptual framework can be created, and then theoretical framework is mostly related to theories. So when you are trying to create a certain theory and you are trying to also, it does not need any empirical kind of work. There are a lot of lemmatization, and there are a lot of formula making that goes behind this theoretical framework. So that is what I can say.
Right, sir. And again, yeah, it is a very case-to-case situation, but thank you very much for a nice answer, sir. I will cut short to and quickly jump to some questions. A lot of people are asking for the PPT. I would request that please send us an email separately for asking the PPT, and we will be providing you the PPT. But yeah, and PPT is really very informative, and thanks to Dr. Shaunak Pal sir for making this wonderful presentation for us. Okay, sir. So I'm moving to next question very quickly. Sir, if there is a research paper, I think this is Professor Parthi is asking this question. Is there, if there is a situation that sample size is very less and not accurate, or very niche sample, can we go ahead with the less sample and do the test as normal? Is it possible? Like, what happens when the sample is very less, sir?
See, the simple idea is that your sample should represent either a population or a section of the population that you are going to focus on. It's all about the unit of analysis that you are trying to gather. So as I have said, your unit of analysis can be an individual, it can be a group, or it can be an organization. So if it is about an individual, if it is about individuals, then I think it should be a big and good amount of sample and should cover all individuals. But if it is about a group and your research is about a particular group, then your sample size can be a niche sample size, and you can easily mention that within this niche sample size how your sample actually is able to cover the whole population. So that is the simple thing, that every time you make a sample, the main idea of research is to represent a general idea by, and empirical research is all about representing the general idea by talking about the whole population,
Right.
or a certain population that experiences that kind of a phenomena. Okay, so whenever we are trying to, but we don't get the chance to get hold of the whole population, so we consider a certain set of the population, right? And then we try to whatever, even if it is a niche population, then also I don't think it is it is always fully covered. So you have to properly mention that, see, those can also come up as a limitation. So you can definitely take up a sample size and discuss about a certain phenomena, but then you have to put it in the limitation that, see, this is what we have done so far. Then future research can be in these other lines.
Right. Wow. So thank you very much for answering it nicely, sir. I have got another question from Professor Sharon. She's asking, okay, she has a very broad question. I think, Sharon, you should write an email to us, because it is a complete thesis we're talking about, and it is very in particular. So please write an email. I will move into the next question for Dr. V.L. Manekar from SVNIT Institute. And he's asking a question whether article processing fees, nowadays asked by many SCI and SCOPUS journals, is to be considered as paid journal. I think, sir, this is an ethical issue. I think a lot of not so good journals and people are practicing it, and there are genuine SCOPUS journals also are practicing for the paid processing of the papers. What is your take on it? It's a very concern, I think, sort of concern for all the researchers.
Yeah, so my take is that, see, there are certain things. So even a lot of good reputed journals have also started. So you have to say that you want to make your particular paper open, and in that case you have to, in that case you have to pay and say that, okay, I want my paper to be open to the public. Okay, and through that you are paying, and there is often a certain consideration that if you pay, then there is a higher chance of your paper getting accepted. Now this is truly an ethical issue, but then it is being done. So what can we do? I mean, we don't pay for so if a good journal is giving us an option that you pay or you don't pay, then you don't, and you choose not to pay, and then that means you are very confident about your journal, or you are very ethical, whatever it is. Either way, that's your choice, whether you will play a part in the ethical, you'll be ethical or you'll be non-ethical or unethical. Okay, so that totally depends on the person.
Right, and nicely answered, sir. And I think I will repeat your phrase when you said that if there is a paid journal, and then there should be some sort of mandate for them to keep the paper in the public forum so that a lot of citations can happen. So yeah, that can be very key for you to decide. Thank you very much, sir. And yeah, I got question from yeah. So I'll moving quickly to the next question, sir. How to publish a research paper? I think this is for the new researchers and for budding researchers. This is generally a problem, sir. Any quick hacks on how to get sure that we are getting published?
I have just given the hacks. This is the hack. This whole session is the hack. And finally, the only thing that I can say is just go to the particular journal. There is a submit your manuscript option, and just click there and submit whatever you have written. So that is the only way of submitting in a journal. I'd also ensure, I'll also say that make sure that in case you have to write a letter to the editor or the reviewers or anything like that, you make it good. Especially after your it happens that your first review comes with a rewrite and review. Okay, RNR, if a good RNR is coming and you are rewriting your paper and sending back to the journal after the first review, then you should make sure that your paper, your mail is well written and is covering all the aspects, because if it is not, then there won't be a second review coming your way. Okay, so after what I am talking about is after you submit and for the first time, it's about once that comes back and you send back the review, you have to be very careful how you are writing your reviews, so that it does not get rejected.
Right, sir. Oh, thank you very much. So I think this is a question concerns to a lot of budding researchers, and it becomes very important for them to know these things. And I'm sure that this answer will help, sir. I'll be going to the good next question. Is that how do you? There is a Professor Mahesh Kumar is asking a question that. What is the difference between qualitative and quantitative? I'm knowing, sir, this is a very basic question, but I would still request you to kindly give. What is the difference between qualitative and quantitative research? Yeah, but it has a confusion.
Qualitative. Yeah, so basic idea about qualitative and quantitative research is qualitative research basically means what kind of these are generally case-based research or interviews where you are writing everything based on your experience. You are you have a story, and from that story you are creating a story and explaining the story to answer a typical research problem. Okay, it's almost like that. So and most of the case-based researches and interview-based researches are based on that. Then there is quantitative research, all the different kinds of survey research, empirical primary as well as secondary based research, all research that consists of data, that is quantitative research, empirical research in a way. So that is one way of saying quantitative research. And there is also mixed research that consists of both qualitative and quantitative. You develop certain ideas through through interviews, and this is a very popular one actually. Nowadays what most of us are doing is that we are taking up interviews and getting general idea. We are then getting the variables from those interviews, and then we are finally actually using those variables to get the results. So that's a very popular way of doing, but still, it's again at the end of the day, everything is about how good your paper is. It's not about what kind of methodology you are using. So you have to be very good in explaining things.
Right. And also, I will be. There is a question about asked by a gentleman called Bobby Narayan, and he's talking about the ethics of the paper. Like he's writing what are covered under the research ethics. I mean, why it is becoming a term. And
Well, plagiarism is a big factor. Plagiarism is an important factor of any research writing. You have to go and check the different rules and regulations of plagiarism, and at times it is also journal based. So every journal has a certain list of things that you have to ensure in order to avoid plagiarism. That is a essential part. So that's all. Plagiarism is something that we have to all keep in mind. We have to be ethical in order to write a research paper. So no matter what ethical or unethical ways we are taking up to publish our journal, but at least once it is published, ensure that you don't end up in jail.
Yes, I mean, yeah. Yeah. That's a good way of looking at it. I mean, I will rephrase your question, sir. As long as we are not copying somebody's work, it is very much ethical, right? So, copying.
Yes, I'd like to add few more things. Yeah, it's good that you mention the citations properly. It is good that you properly put the different. If you are writing some quotes, properly mention those things in quotes. Mention the author name, or at least the properly mention the citation immediately there. Okay, so even if your diagram, one of the big mistakes that people do is that when they're say their diagram is actually inspired by some other diagram, they have only made a one or two changes in it. So in that case, at least mention that it covers is derived from another diagram. Okay, that doesn't reduce your credibility.
Right, sir. And I will be reading one more question from Bobby Narayan, sir, is that please discuss about one-tailed hypothesis. I think that's a very specific question, sir. You can take time to answer it because it's very specific research methodology. I will repeat the question.
Mention the question again.
Yes, sir. It is please discuss about one-tailed hypothesis. Is there a thing I
one-tailed hypothesis? Okay, one-tailed hypothesis. Okay. One-tailed hypothesis is right now I'm unable to actually think of a good example about it. Maybe in future, if the person contacts you, then I can later on, help in explaining it later on. But presently, it's not coming in my mind. One-tailed hypothesis is basically one type of hypothesis that is mainly related to either how can I say, it's totally dependent on one-tail statistics. There are different kind of tests that happen, and overall, when we are representing a population, we are representing the positive results as well as the negative results. There is a mean. So anything towards the left and right, that is the mean, and anything that is towards the right, any one of the sides is the one-tailed. But what kind of an example I can give, I'm not very sure. I have to think of it.
And very detailed the research methodology specific question is, we can always take it later. And also, sir, there is a question written by Professor Mahesh Kumar, is what is the difference between dependent and independent variable? I think for new researchers, this is a very important question again.
Yes, so dependent variable, it's all about and first of all, establish correlation doesn't mean, I'll start with the factor that correlation does not mean causality. So it is important first to establish the causal relationship between two variables through proper writing only. This can be only done through proper writing or previous findings. Okay, that is how I should say that a good causal relationship can be established. Once that is done, then anything that is causing the other to happen. So if something is so, because this particular session was scheduled, I am here. So the session becomes the independent variable, and I am the dependent variable, because my presence in this session is affected because this session was scheduled for me to come here. Okay, so you can say anything that causes something is the independent variable, and the one that is affected is the dependent variable. Okay.
Right. Quote your
I'll
example.
I'll give a better example in a few minutes. Let me think of a good example. I'll explain that. Let's go to the next questions.
Can I support an example, sir? For example, I'm testing that whether rain happens at X temperature. So I think if the rain can
okay,
be...
yeah, that can be, yeah. Thank you for giving me the cue. Okay, so yes, so when there is cloud, there is rain. If we say that, okay, so rain is the dependent variable. So clouds. So if cloud causes rain, then cloud is the independent variable and rain is the dependent variable. Right. So also we can say that yes, cloud becomes the X factor and rain becomes the Y factor. So how much cloud is, then we can start defining how much cloud will actually help in determining this going to be there is going to be a rain. So that how much is answered by the coefficient, beta coefficient, we can say. Yeah.
Exactly. So I will take one last question from Bobby Narayan, Professor Bobby Narayan once again. He's asking, can we gradually change research methodology during one research? I think it is really debatable and is a question worth answering to, sir. Your take.
Yeah, so gradually changing. So if you are using, say, if you start working on a certain research paper and you think that, okay, this methodology is not good, this is better. And then, so generally what happens is that as a take of precise research paper, I would say that you give the final methodology for your research paper so that it is small and it is understandable. But in case you want that, no, I don't want my previous works to go unnoticed, so I'd like to suggest a sequential way of developing my model, how I have developed my model sequentially. That can also be a way of doing it. Okay, so both ways it is okay.
Right. Okay, sir. I think we are still having a lot of questions with us, but we can conclude with these questions. A lot of questions we did not attend, and a lot of questions are still coming up. A lot of people have said that it was very nice and informative session for them. Perhaps we will be accommodating all the questions once again through emails and contacting each one of you and trying to answering all of your mail. Friends, this was a free session for all of you, and we will be having more such free sessions very particular to topic selection, test, and hypothesis, and we will be taking the case-based analysis also. Once again, I will say thank you to everyone for the participating, and yeah, so I'll be now requesting Professor Tapan Pandit sir to acknowledge the vote of thanks. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Jiten. Hello, everyone. I am Tapan Pandit. I am looking after the operations here at Persec Research. First of all, I would like to thank our esteemed guest speaker for the day, Dr. Shaunak Pal, for sparing his valuable time for us and explaining the topic in such a simplistic manner. In fact, sir has used some examples and he has used some humor also. It was really interesting to see the mix of humor in research, because research is serious, but humor also plays a good role here. Thank you, sir. The session was really amazing, and I'm sure the audience must have achieved sound understanding of the topics covered. Thank you once again, sir. It was a pleasure having you with us today. I would also like to thank the wonderful audience for being present and participating actively. We are really happy to have you here. The questions you all were asking itself indicates your sincerity to do some quality research work. I can understand the research and the details of research is quite challenging, and everyone is having many queries and doubts in their mind. And it was quite visible by the questions you all were asking. So again, it is really wonderful having you. I thank you from whole team of Persec Research.
from the side of whole team of Persec Research. If you want more information and content on research related topics like how to write literature review or how to frame research methodology or collecting the data using various techniques or data analysis using SPSS and similar various things, then definitely I would request you to please subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to receive notifications on time to time basis. We are going to bring such webinars and workshops for you on continuous basis. That is our promise. You can also visit our website www.persec.in, persec.in for more details. You can send your queries to us. We will revert back for sure, definitely. And yes, registered participant will receive certificates. We will make that sure. Don't worry about that. And many people are asking whether we are going to get certificates or not. Last but not the least, I thank our digital and marketing team here at Persec for arranging such a wonderful webinar and make it reach to a suitable audience. So thank you, Avesh, Yash, Prashni, Ranvijay, and everyone involved. Excellent job, team. Thanks once again from the whole Persec team, and we will see you soon. So yeah, thank you, Jiten.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Okay, sir. Thank you. I think we can wind up this session for now. If you, the audience have any queries, then please keep us posting on emails, and you can also use our contact form at our website. And please subscribe to this channel for getting more content and information.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.